I heard it said that some people dream the dream. Some people chase the dream. Some people live the dream. And then there are those that defend the dream by standing on the wall for the rest of us. We celebrate today those defenders. Those that gave up some portion of their life, whether it was 2 years or 32 years. I was thinking in the first service about our rights, and sometimes we just came out of a political season, and I don't want to go there, however that turned out for you. But there's a lot of talk about our rights. And we are granted, the Declaration of Independence says we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. They can't be taken away. We're not endowed by the government with certain inalienable rights, by God. And the founders even wrote it into the Constitution. When they got the Constitution all written, they went back and added the Bill of Rights. These are the enumerated rights that every American citizen has by an act of God, not government. Somehow we've gotten to the place in our country where we think our rights are given to us by the government. The rights are given to us by God. It's up to us to protect those rights. But they are God-given rights nonetheless. There are people standing on the wall right now today to protect our rights. The right to freely assemble. The right to worship as we see fit. The right to our own political opinions. We have a right to vote. You know, in Russia, you don't have a right to vote your leader in. A lot of countries have dictators. You don't have a right to vote your leadership in. In North Korea, Kim Jong-un, you don't have a right to vote for him anytime throughout the year. A lot of African countries have dictators. We have the right to select our leadership. But that right has to be defended. That's one of the rights that can be lost if we're not careful. Those of you who didn't serve, when a young man goes into the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, it doesn't matter, National Guard, you raise your hand, take an oath of office. I solemnly swear that I will defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I swear true faith and allegiance to the same. And I don't know if they still do it, but in my day, it was so help me God. They've probably taken that out by now. But I've heard it said when a young man or a young lady take that oath, they write a check to the United States government, a blank check, for any amount up to and including their life. And any demand can be placed upon them. They can be sent anywhere to do anything, any time of the year, for the length of their service. So today we honor those that serve. You see, when you take that oath, you put a bookmark in your life, whether you're 17 years old, as many young men have, particularly like in World War II or the Civil War. You bookmark your life until such time as you get out. That is a chapter. In the book of your life, that's an entire chapter. I'm glad I did it personally. But I wouldn't want to have to do it again. I asked last year, we had a bunch of guys up here, I think it was on Memorial Day, guys that had worn one of the uniforms of whatever color. When they were all done, I said, if you were asked to put your uniform on again, would you do it? And every one of them said yes. May not want to, but they would. I remember what it means to raise your hand and take that oath. When Juan and I were in Israel, we went up on the Golan Heights. It's on the east side of the Galilee. And at the time, in 1967, that was territory of Syria. And Syria built all sorts of gun embankments up there, machine guns, artillery, and they're up there today. You can go up and see them. The weaponry has been removed, but you can go up and see, and artillery will reach across the Sea of Galilee. That was a perpetual threat on the Golan Heights, in the city of Tiberias, on Israel itself. And then Syria made the mistake of attacking Israel in another place. But the Israelis, when they went to war against Syria, those young soldiers had to go up a snake trail, back and forth and back. It's very, very high and very steep snake trail going, and they were receiving fire the whole time. And I think about those young men and women. Women served in Israeli armed forces. As they climbed that snake trail, being fired upon, what was in their minds? I think back to World War II at the cliffs of Normandy. You jump in the water and you see buddies getting hit all around you from the machine gun fire up on the cliffs at Normandy. Bodies laying everywhere in the surf. Probably the most dramatic reenactment of that is a movie called The Saving of Private Ryan, if you've ever seen that. It's very graphic. A lot of those boys just made it out of the boat and got shot, floated up on the beach. The rest of them had to go attack the cliffs. What must have been running through? Those were young men. Life had just started, 18, 19, 20 years old. They were young men. They were standing on the wall in defense of freedom. I want to read something to you I found some time ago, and it probably will abbreviate my statement. But it's written about a combat soldier. Most of the guys in the first service, I think there were 4 of them that saw actual combat. I didn't, and Dick didn't. Alex, I don't know, have you seen? No. Most people serve, get in and out, and never see combat. It takes like 100 logistic person to keep one on the front lines of combat. Most people that serve never see combat. But this is about those that stand on the wall, those that are involved in combat on a daily basis. And I think back to my time, about those young men that spent 1 year in the rice paddies in Vietnam. The average age of a combat soldier is 19 years. He's short-haired, tight-muscled kid who, under normal circumstances, is considered by society to be a half-man, half-boy, not yet fully adult, not yet drive behind the years. He's not yet old enough to buy a beer, but he's old enough to die for his country. He never really cared much for work, and he'd rather wax his own car than to wax his father's. He's a recent high school graduate, probably an average student. He was in some sort of sports. He drives a 10-year-old car. He has a steady girlfriend who either broke up with him when he went to the military or she said, "I'll wait for you." He listens to rock and roll, hip-hop, rap, jazz, swing. Sometimes he listens to a 155 millimeter howitzer. He's 15 pounds lighter now than when he was at home because he's working or fighting from dawn till after dusk. He has trouble spelling. Thus, letter writing is a pain for him, but he can field strip a rifle in 30 seconds and put it back together again quicker, even in the dark. He can recite to you the nomenclature of a machine gun or a grenade launcher, and he can use either one with equally effective. He digs foxholes in latrines. He can march till he's told to stop. He can stop till he's told to march. He obeys orders instantly, without hesitation, without reflection. "Yes, sir." When they say, "Take that hill," he doesn't ask his officer why. He heads up the hill. When they say, "Hit the cliffs at Normandy," he didn't turn around to his officer and say, "What are we doing here?" They hit the cliffs at Normandy. He has 2 sets of fatigues. He washes one and wears the other. He keeps his canteens full, his feet dry, and his gun loaded. He sometimes forgets to brush his teeth, but he never forgets to clean his rifle. He can cook his own meals, mend his own clothes, fix his own hurts. If you're thirsty, he'll share his water with you. If you're hungry, he'll share his food with you. If you're running low on ammo, he'll share his ammo with you. He's learned to use his hand like weapons and use weapons like his hands. He can save your life or take it, because that's what he's trained to do. He will often do twice the work of a civilian and draw half the pay. And somehow, ironically, they kind of find humor in that. He's seen more suffering and death than he should in a short lifetime. He's wept openly in public and in private as he's buried friends. He feels every note of the national anthem. It vibrates through his body while he stands at rigid attention, tempering the burning desire to go straighten out those around him who don't bother to stand or take off their hat or can't at least stop talking during the playing of the national anthem. But he understands that he's in combat to defend the right to do that. He serves just as his father did, his grandfather, great-grandfather. He is paying the price for our freedom. He's an American fighting man. Kept this country free for over 250 years, since the founding. We owe them a great debt of gratitude. As most of you know, I'm a student of history, and I've studied a lot of the battles and a lot of the famous personalities and generals and so forth. And in April, May, and June of 1944, a year before the war in Europe was over, the generals knew, General Patton knew, the other generals, Eisenhower, they knew that the war was already over. But they had daily to keep fighting the battle. They were guaranteed the war was over. The same thing happened with Lincoln at Gettysburg. He knew the war was over, but they had to continue to fight to put an end to it. The battle rages on. It was Patton who said, no one won a war by dying for their country. We've heard that phrase, young men die for their country. He said, you win a war by making the other guy die for his country. The common idea of a soldier giving his life for his country is reimagined by the Apostle Paul in almost every one of his letters in the New Testament. If you read them, he's constantly referring the Christian walk, our day-to-day walk. He's comparing it to the life of a soldier fighting in that battle. You see, Paul understood Jesus won the war on the cross. It's already been won. Go read Revelation. It's over. He's coming back someday. The cloud's going to split. He's coming back on a white stallion. He's going to set his foot on the Mount of Olives. And then he's headed off to Armageddon to defeat the nations of the world that have come against Israel. That is already settled. But Paul reminds us, we are left here to fight the battle. The war's over. Jesus went to hell for us and came out. He won the victory. But we still have the battle to fight. Paul reminds us in Ephesians 6 to put on the full armor of God. You need the whole armor of God to withstand the wiles of the enemy. And then he goes on to explain, for we do not wrestle with nations and kings and soldiers and armies. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. That is our battle. If you're a born-again believer, if you've accepted Christ, your war is over, but your battle continues. Paul continues to write about that in all of these letters. He writes about the metaphor of fighting the battle. He uses another metaphor of an athlete. You run the race. You've got to train yourself to run the race. And if you remember in 2 Timothy, he wrote in chapter 4, he says, telling Timothy, I'm soon to leave this earth, but I fought the good fight. I finished the race, and I kept the faith. And most of the New Testament is Paul telling us how to fight that battle. Because he knows, as we do, the victory's already been won. The trumpet will sound on that day. The eastern sky will open. Christ will return on a white stallion. He's followed by an army clothed in white and all the saints who in this life trusted him. He's bringing a great army with him. And they will descend upon the field at Armageddon. It's a huge, huge valley. It's probably 10, 15 miles across and 50 miles long. And that's where the armies of the nations, the Bible says, will be gathered against Israel. And he and all the saints that went before will swoop down and utterly defeat them. The war has been won. The victory is ours, but the battle for us rages on. If you're a born-again believer, if you've accepted Jesus Christ and committed your life to follow him as best you can, recognizing we all fail, as best you can, there's nothing the devil can do to drag you down.
Amen.
Amen. That's already been decided. There's nothing. But he can ruin your witness. And Paul tells us how we should live our lives. The whole Bible is a book of instructions on how we should live to honor God. How we should live as a response to the grace that God poured out on Calvary. We can't earn that grace, but we need to respond to it in an appropriate way. And Paul tells us how to do that. But when you step outside of those instructions, when Satan tempts you to not, he can ruin your witness. And that's the call on each one of us today. To stay in love with God and to continue to fight the battle until such time as we can say, I fought the good fight. I finished the race. I kept the faith. Those who have asked to serve would please come.